Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, the creator and host of the award-winning podcast that you're listening to right now. Thank you so much, called Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. It is a daily podcast, 365 days a year, and each day we talk to an author about all of the things related to their career, their book, their life, and more in 30 minutes or less, because who has time? I am now an author myself, although I wasn't when I started this podcast, and you can get my new memoir, Bookends, a memoir of love, loss, and literature, wherever books are sold starting July 1st, and my children's book, Princess Charming. You can learn more about me at zibbyowens.com, but really you're here to learn more about the authors, and that is what we're going to do. Also, be sure to check out all the other podcasts in the Zcast Podcast Network. You can learn more at zcastnetwork.com and definitely check out those shows as well. Amy Fusselman is the author of The Means, a novel. Amy is the author of 5 books. Her latest, The Means, is her first novel. Her previous 4 books were all nonfiction, have been translated into several languages. Her work has been nominated for the Believer Book Award and the University of Iowa's Krauss Essay Prize. Her essays and articles have appeared in the New York Times, The Atlantic, The Washington Post, McSweeney's Internet Tendency, Ms., Art News, ArtNet, and many others. She lives in New York City with her family and teaches creative writing at New York University. Welcome, Amy. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss The Means, your novel.
Yay. Thanks for having me. I'm really happy.
Your book was so funny and smart and just hilarious. And I chuckled out loud over and over and over again. And it's just so funny. I mean, your sense of humor is so great. Anyway, I totally enjoyed it. It was super enjoyable.
Awesome.
Why don't you tell listeners what The Means is about?
Sure. Yeah, The Means is a tragicomic novel about a woman named Shelly Means, and she's a stay-at-home mom in Manhattan. She has 2 kids, and she's managing all her household stuff, and she gets this sort of bee in her bonnet, this kind of obsession that she really wants respite from her life. She wants to chill, and for her, that means lying next to her pool at a beach house in the Hamptons. And so she's married to a guy named George, who's a voiceover artist, whose career is kind of on the downswing because he can't properly voice the chicken bacon detonator. And so Shelly is actually, she finds someone who can build a beach house for her for inexpensively on this little plot of land they managed to buy in the Springs. And the beach house is going to be out of shipping containers, and the housing association is up in arms about it. And so the whole book is basically the shenanigans of this woman who's trying in a really pretty subversive and intelligent way to get what she wants. It's also, I mean, thematically, it's very comic. It goes down easy, but it's also about the suffering inherent in desire, capitalist delusion, misogyny, and it's comic. So it goes wide. It goes wide. It goes fast, but it goes wide.
Yes. Comedy with a purpose, right? With a message. There were just so many funny lines about how she feels about her own life. She is always referring to all of the things on her plate with this aggrieved nature. I have all these things and I have to add to my workload. And okay, well, I am a stay-at-home, but I also make lunch for Clementine. And I also I do this too. And I also have to walk Twix, and her diminished time that she spends with Darby the dog walker means that she has to take this on more and more. And everything she adds to her plate just seems like so hard to overcome, right? She's so aggrieved. So I loved how you did that. She and her childhood and her own relationship with money and how she views herself now. I don't know. It was so interesting. So tell me about crafting her as a character, because she's so multi-layered, and then the conversations she has with the dog. I mean, anyway, so how did you come up with her?
Yeah. Well, I like that you are picking up on that thread, because I did want to, I feel like Shelly was an interesting character to make because I knew from the get-go that she's someone who's not generally portrayed as sympathetic. I wanted to take a view into money through a portal that I hadn't seen or read about. Whereas, her kids are in private school in Manhattan. I mean, although they're on financial aid, they're in private school. She lives near FIT, like in the sort of down market part of Chelsea, but she's a stay-at-home mom. She has a ponytail and these kids. And I think generally the way to write about, that kind of wealth in Manhattan is disdainfully. And I really wanted a way into her that was about mothering and about caregiving and about that work. And even, I feel like the title of your podcast really is pushing against a similar thing of like, moms don't have time to do anything but their mom work. Like moms don't have time for leisure. Mom don't have time for pleasure. And I love actually that you named the fact that this podcast exists is your response to that. And for Shelly Means, in some ways, it's a similar thing. Like she gets this beach house. Spoiler alert. She gets this thing built, by hook or by crook. Like it happens for her because she's determined and she's smart. And I think she's just really interesting. She was an interesting way in for me to write about these elements of money that I was interested in exploring.
It seemed many times that this house was not going to be made in any way. And I think one of the themes is you have to have money to make money, right? I think that's sort of where it all comes. And then there's this whole other thread where, towards the end where they're like, well, have you ever been in serious debt? Because once you are, then you can't get out of that. And if your family was like that as a child, and then here she is sort of like taking the land and then like finding other opportunities, which also were so funny, to make money that way too. And it just all seemed so unlikely. Like it seemed like it was not going to work out. And yet once she did it, then it just could lead to better things. Whereas her poor husband is like driving in the car and he's like, oh no, they didn't choose me for this ad. And when he hears the voiceover. So I feel like it is some sort of commentary on, where do you start? Like, do you start in a place where you have the opportunity to really rise up, or do you not? Are you doomed from the beginning? It feels like that's being examined in part as well.
Yeah. I really was interested in writing every scene to like locate where the money is in the scene. Mm-hmm. Where are the resources? Because I think that happens, in real life. It's like, who has what, who's offering what, who's preying on who. Like, it's kind of it's not a rose tinted view, but it's interesting to me, especially because I feel like the money in that sense isn't often explored, especially for women in fiction. So Shelley in some ways is operating in like a shadow economy because it's still, I cringe even saying this, but like the idea that is a woman entitled to her partner's income is, still a question. And the idea of like, is stay-at-home mom like real work? Caregivers in this country are notoriously, it was just in the Times yesterday, another feature on this, like underpaid and undervalued. And that's all part of, what I wanted to examine in a system that I feel needs reevaluation, like stat, because It involves women's lives. It involves, and how, caregiving is huge. It's how we treat each other. It's how we live. It needs to be acknowledged and supported, in my view.
Yes, absolutely. If you hire a caregiver to do, let's say you go to work and you have to hire someone to do the caregiving, like that person, that does have value. Like that's an actual job. So if you decide to stay home, it's not like you're not doing a job. You're just doing the job of that would be your job. You're just not getting paid for it.
Yeah. It's for women, even I added these elements to Shelley's character because I knew that would be, part of why she's contemptible in some ways. It's like she has a dog walker, she has a cleaning lady, like, oh, how dare she? And yet I feel like she's a sympathetic character. She doesn't view herself, she's an underdog, and she's an underdog through the whole book. So to play with those expectations was part of the pleasure in the writing of this for me.
You even have the time where she gets a party planner. And you're like, she's like, if that's not the height of wealth, like what is? I have somebody to help me plan my parties in my house, you know?
Right. Well, I think that's it too, is that she has a lot of people who are sort of preying on her at the same time that she's, she has a therapist who's also then becomes her real estate broker, which is, highly like unethical. And I mean, everybody is sort of out for a take. I mean, that's part of the landscape. Yeah.
You have that one moment where when George has just lost his next gig and he thinks any opportunity to make more money. And she's like, we're going to have to sell this land. And there's just this silence between them as they realize, like, how am I going to keep paying for this CBT? And then she's like, but wait,
There's always about wait. There's always about wait. Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. So where did you come up with the idea for the whole book in general? I know we talked about Shelly, but I was researching your other books, and this seems like a pretty big departure from some of the other ones. I didn't read them, although they look great. Now I'm like, I have to go back because I love the way you write. But where did this come from?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to try writing a novel. That was like step one. And I knew I wanted to write something comic, and I also knew I wanted to write about money. So that was like the three things I was trying to hit. And so I do have a shipping container beach house in the Hamptons. And
no way.
I can tell you that, my experience was not like Shelly's, but I could see that, through a different lens, it could become comic. So I took what I knew about the landscape and about that process and, made it a completely different thing. But it's grounded in my experience in that landscape for sure.
Is your house in the Springs?
Yes, it is in the Springs with the shitty cell phone service. Yeah.
I know, that was a
shout out.
Yeah. I mean, cell phone service is pretty bad everywhere out there, but that's great. So what was it like then tackling this project? And maybe go back and tell me, like, how did you even get started as an author? And how did all your projects build? And maybe like a quick thing about each of your books.
Sure. Yeah, I went to college. I got a degree in poetry. That was my first love, was that sort of exploration of, consciousness, sensory experience, the eye of experience has always been interesting to me. And so I wrote these nonfiction books that are not nonfiction in the sense of like, my name's Amy and I scaled Mount Everest. They're not really heroic about my life. They're more like a poet's sort of perspective, like, here's what I see, here's what I experience. And I've tackled sort of different topics, a lot of, about motherhood, because I have 3 kids. I'm sober, I was sexually abused as a kid. I mean, I've written about all that stuff. My third book is called Savage Park, and it's about a playground in Tokyo that I got pretty involved in. It's an adventure playground, which we now have on Governor's Island. We have one of those. But so I'm really interested in, in mothering and art making and creativity. Yeah, women's issues, children, all of that. That's my wheelhouse. Love it. And now fiction and money.
How old are your kids?
My oldest is a junior in college. My second kid just started college this fall, and my youngest is a freshman in high school.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's weird. It's weird. Like, I think your kids need you in a different way when they are teens. They need you so intensely when they're small, in a way that's like so physical. Like, you have to be present, you have to watch as that they don't scoot into the intersection, but they need you in high school and college also. It's just, they need your presence in a different way.
Yes. I have 2 15-year-olds.
Oh man, you're in the thick of it.
And I also have a 9-year-old and an almost 8-year-old. So we run the gamut of emotions.
We do. Look at that. Awesome.
But I also loved your portrayal of Jack and Clementine. Jack, right? Not Jake, Jack. Yeah. And my son is applying out to boarding schools for high school now. So we're like deep in the test prep, and you're like all of that with, his applications and wanting your kids to be motivated and all of that. And ultimately that their behavior is not anything you can control, and their preferences, like the black room or whatever. Like you just don't know what's going to come out of their mouths.
Yeah. I feel like this, I'm lucky to write and to have, I learn from my writing. And this book that I wrote about Japan really informed like a lot of how I deal with my kids, because they have this thing at this adventure playground called the Play Worker. And this is a playground in Japan where the children play with like open fires. Like that's not a hyperbole. So the play worker's job is to like witness and facilitate, but not to interfere. And it's so like there's a lot of pressure. I mean, I grew up in the Midwest. There's a lot of pressure in this town to, have high achieving children and to be high achieving yourself, of course. But I learned so much about just watching and responding to what is rather than bulldozing in and directing from that work. And I feel like, parenting is so humbling anyway, but it takes a lot of, you can't control other people. It's just the bottom line. And it's a painful lesson to learn.
Yes. Very true. Yes. Lots to fight against there. Always trying. Well, I will not give up, but
no, I mean, you can't, you have to row the boat. That's just your job. Yeah.
So when you think about the means and sort of the message about money or wealth that you're trying to put out into the world, like if there's like a thesis statement behind it or what you really want people to know or believe or see because of this book, like what would that be?
Well, I think Shelly is, she's someone who's sort of deep in capitalist delusion. Like she believes that she can make this happen. But in the, again, spoiler alert, like in the end, what happens is that she's taken out of sort of the shadow economy of being a stay-at-home mom, and she gets a quote real job. That's her prize. Like, yep. You don't actually get your beach house because you're having to rent it out for porn films, and you get a job. Like, yay! So, I mean, I guess it's not a book that I wanted to, it doesn't tell you how to feel, and it doesn't, spoon feed you in that sense. But I wanted it to raise questions about, mothering as legit work, about wanting, about materialism, about, there's a lot about the landscape of the Hamptons is insane. And I mean, as it all, the land itself is stolen. I mean, that's where we're at, that should just be like a naked fact that we're dealing with all the time, all over.
I appreciated that bit of history too on the Shinnecock Reservation and where Montauk and all of that came from. You're like, yeah, it's like that place where they say it's ocean view, but it's really not ocean view.
Exactly, it's partial ocean, right? Yeah.
Well, I don't know. There's so much anti-wealth sentiment right now. I literally on my way to school to drop my kids at school this morning, this car had a huge bumper sticker that from the Marines that said, fight the rich, not their wars or something. And I'm like, okay, so that's where we are, right? Like, right. What is that fair? Like, what do you think? What would Shelly think about that? What do you think about that?
I think that, that was part of why this book isn't set in, like the projects or whatever. I wanted it to be really a liminal space. I wanted it to be, well, I'm not, to raise questions like, wow, I'm not sure about this. Like, this is seemingly someone I would hate. Like what? But she seems to be, beset with some of the struggles that are relatable to me. Like, what does that mean? What, it's not clear cut. I mean, we're all working within a system that I think most people acknowledge needs some powerful change. How does that affect everyday interactions of, invisible people who aren't heroic, who are kind of invisible, moms being one? What's that actually look like? How do I contribute to this? What are the things I can do? Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot.
Yeah. But the joy of the book is it goes down funny. So
it does. It's so fun. Great.
Yeah. So
great.
Yeah, I feel happy about that.
No, the book is great. I loved the book. It's it's fast paced and entertaining, and you just, some of the scenes where she's throwing things and she's like, oh no, I did it again. I'm like, what is going on with her? Why is she all of a sudden, she seems like she has it all together, and yet you show all of her cracks, which are so obvious, right? But you don't even see them coming. But
she's in a rage. Shelly's in a rage, and rightly so. She's contemptible. She feels it. She's her work's on acknowledge. She's trying to negotiate these systems that are bananas. Yeah, it's God bless her. Yeah, she's throwing shit. She got kicked off the PTA. Yeah.
So what kind of feedback are you getting since this book has been out? Tell me about that.
Well, I'm not somebody who's like Googling my reviews all the time, so I can only
on tour and
I'm trying to show up, and I feel like it became increasingly clear that I did need to talk more about that it's more than a funny book. Yeah, that there's more going on there. I'm grateful that people are finding it funny, because that, again, it's not easy to write funny, and that was one of my primary goals. So that people find it funny is a super win. I'm very happy about that. But I also wanted it to start talking about the fact that it goes a little deeper than that. Yeah. I'm grateful, for whatever, again, with the not being able to control people. People will take from the book what they will, and there's really not a lot I can do about that. But I did want to start just talking about these are other elements, other facets of it that I crafted. So it's important.
And so what are you working on now?
Ooh, well, I'm about to leave tomorrow for the fabulous Texas Book Fest. And then I have a reading in Chicago and a couple college things. So that will be fun, I hope. Yeehaw. And I'm working on another novel, because why not? So keep going. Yeah. Moms don't have time to write novels. Yeah.
Right. How long did this one take? How long does a book typically take you? Or I know they're all different, but
probably took the longest, just because I was, I didn't know what I was, and I worked pretty closely with my agent, Monica Woods, whose input I'm grateful for and who I really enjoy working with. So to prepare the book, and I was also not, some of my previous stuff has been pretty experimental, and I wasn't interested in playing with form in this at all. It had a big enough burden to just be comic and to be about money. I didn't want to throw anything else at a reader it's going to have weird line breaks. No. So just to give it a solid structure, to give it a beginning, middle, and end, all that stuff was enough of a challenge for me. So it took about 3 years, really. Yeah.
Wow. I hope I can introduce you at some point. So I started a publishing company also called Zibby Books.
Yes, congratulations. That's so amazing. Shelly and I bow down. That is awesome. Yeah.
Thank you. But one of the books we acquired that's coming out in 2024 is also set in East Hampton, and it has something kind of similar in the observational nature of the craziness there, and it's called I Want You More, but it ends up being a little bit of a thriller. But anyway, the author is Swan Huntley, and she's amazing. So anyway, I feel like you guys would have some really interesting conversations, and
good fun. We'll meet on the beach.
Yeah, meet on the beach for a walk or something. What advice would you have for aspiring authors?
Ooh, that's so good. I teach at NYU, but that's about crafting more than about, the publishing. I love that I could talk to you for a long time about your publishing company. I think it's always good to have more venues and more women. It's good. So I guess the thing that I've been thinking about lately is that there's so many different ways to be a writer. I don't participate. I'm going to the Texas Book Fest, which is this is the only book fest I've been to, I think. And this is the second time I'll be going there. But a lot of writers who've, written 5 books, as I have, participate in what I think of as the writing economy. They go to book fests, they teach at colleges, they speak at colleges, all those things are, their income, and that's how they make it work. They're kind of like, they're a little bit, I think, kind of like traveling salesmen. I don't say that in a derogatory way. It's just like they have their product and they go out there with it. And it's awesome. That's never been a way that was open to me because of my kids and my choices. So I guess for a long time, I felt like there was something wrong with me that I couldn't do that, and I feel like there's so many ways to be a writer. If you just write, you don't have to be at every festival or teaching or doing anything except writing and trying to find a way to be published. And even, I think of Louise Bourgeois, lived 16 blocks from me and raised 3 kids. So I think about her a lot. She was also, in technical terms, a stay-at-home mom. So I think about her a lot. And she would say that she was grateful for the art, the critics that really gave her, I think, a decade or two of basically ignoring her, so to just write. And that's what makes you a writer. There's a zillion ways to, dance with the industry. Don't be discouraged if you're not doing the primary way.
I like that. I know any events I have to schedule around my custody schedule. And I'm like, hold on, I have to check and I can't switch this day. And
of course. Yeah. Because you're spinning the plates.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I love that you make time for it all, Zibby. I think that's awesome.
Well, you too.
I didn't start a publishing company or a podcast, but I appreciate it.
No problem. I do it all from home. That's
I know. Cool. I love that. I think that's
I was literally just saying that to my kids before. And I was a stay-at-home mom for 11 years where I did other things. But yeah, I'm like, don't you think it's great that I figured out a way to do all this in our house?
What did they say?
I know. They're like, yeah, it's so cool.
Aww.
My daughter comes home from school and sits and does her homework with my team at the dining room table. It's really cute.
Best. Anyway. That's the best. Yes.
We just all have to find ways to make it work, right?
Exactly. Yes.
All right. Well, I hear your Twix in the background.
Yeah, exactly.
That might be, but thanks so much for chatting. I really, really enjoyed your book and hearing all the extra layers. And I hope we can connect.
Cool. I would love that. Thank you. I appreciate it. Have
Thanks so much. Day. You too. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Also sign up for my newsletter at zibbyowens.com and sign up for my virtual book club and meet lots of authors on Zoom every other week. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing. And thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music.